This episode of The Unstarving Musician is sponsored by Liner Notes. Want to learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry pros I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician? Sign up for Liner Notes, my curated email newsletter where I share the best insights and knowledge gems from these conversations, some of which have been featured here on the podcast. From marketing to songwriting to touring and sync licensing, you'll get actionable tips delivered straight to your inbox every 2 weeks. Liner Notes Insider, the deep dive edition, will feature exclusive deep dives, detailed case studies, and premium content that goes beyond the podcast interviews. Sign up at unstarvingmusician.com/liner notes. It's free to get started, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Welcome to The Unstarving Musician. I'm Rabonzo, your host. This is my podcast. How are you? Where are you? What are you wearing? What am I wearing? The Unstarving Musician, as you may know, is a podcast where I speak with independent musicians, music industry folks, and lately, creatives of non-musical disciplines to explore the creative journey, the business behind music, creativity, and more. This episode is dropping a little later in the day than usual. I hope that's okay with you. But today I sit down with three-time guest Bree Noble. Bree is a musician and music industry professional who has been podcasting for over a decade and has built multiple successful shows, including Women of Substance, Female Entrepreneur Musician, and now the Profitable Musician Show. What makes Bree's story particularly compelling is how she transformed from a touring musician into a podcasting powerhouse, going from recording shows at her kitchen table while the kids were at school to becoming a recognized thought leader who's been featured in Forbes and won podcasting awards. We discuss the realities of podcast consistency, the technical hurdles she's overcome, and how she's leveraging AI tools like Cast Magic to streamline her workflow. Bree shares candid new podcaster insights about front-loading episodes and pre-planning interview questions. She also talks about why episode swaps and collaboration episodes are working so well for her and other podcasters. Whether you're a musician considering podcasting as another creative outlet or you're an independent artist working to strengthen relationships with your existing audience, this conversation reveals the practical strategies from someone who has navigated every stage of podcast growth. Starting a podcast can feel overwhelming. There are technical considerations and, like with any content medium, consistency requirements. This is why Bree's journey is so inspiring and instructive. No one finds starting a podcast easy without a comprehensive roadmap. As fate would have it, I've created a complete roadmap in a course called Podcast Startup. The course covers everything from equipment selection to testing video with gear you already have. And you'll find details at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast startup. I will include a link in the show notes for this episode for you to check that out. Now, let's dive into my conversation with the always insightful Bree Noble. You've been podcasting for over 10 years?
I have. Since 2014, believe it or not.
Now, did you rebrand because, let's see, I think it was Female Entrepreneur Musician. I hope I got that right, but it looks like Profitable Musician Show is not a name I was familiar with in the early days. Is that right?
That's right. So, Female Entrepreneur Musician was my podcast that I started in 2015. And because I had also been doing the Women of Substance podcast, and so I was, focusing on females, elevating females in the industry. So why not, speak specifically to them? So that's what I did. Then in 2020, when I had kind of rebranded as Profitable Musician after doing a couple Profitable Musician summits and really focusing on helping musicians make money, that's when I launched that other podcast because I felt like it was very timely during the pandemic. Like, how can we make money without being able to gig or a traditional gig?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So is there just one now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, kind of. So actually, I have both feeds. So they both exist in the world, and they're both named different things, but it's the same episodes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing.
Because you had the established brand, you went ahead and kept them both?
Yeah, and it's the feed. You can't transfer the feed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
I have all these legacy listeners that I don't want to lose.
I understand. Yeah, I had never thought about that. And then just to give people context, you also had, does the streaming radio show predate any of the podcasts?
Yeah, so Women of Substance was a radio show first. It started in 2007.
Wow.
Yeah, I wasn't really talking on there. It was just my music taste as far as label artists and indie artists. And I was like soliciting for more indie artists to come on the show, and I wanted to like have them side by side, you know. And then I just saw where things were going. Like podcasting was more popular, it was growing, online radio wasn't really growing.
Are you still
So
digging podcasting after all? I mean, you've been
I am
through.
so digging it. I
Oh,
love
good.
it.
Oh, good. Good. You've really been through. I mean, we could call you an OG, right? You went from streaming
Pretty
radio
much.
to early podcasting. Now, was 2015 though? Did you start actually podcasting before then?
So 2014 is when I moved the online radio station to the podcast. So
Okay.
Women of Substance started in 20, about fall 2014, I started podcasting. And that was fun because then I got to talk. Like I wasn't really talking on the radio thing. Now I got to introduce the songs and say a little bit about each artist, which was fun. And I was just picking the indie ones at that point because I was still playing label artists because there was a way with the radio station to have it
Hmm.
so it's, you're dealing with the royalties and all that stuff. Podcasting is different, right? I have to have the
Yes.
permission of everybody. So I was only doing the indies, and I think I kept them both going until 2017, and then I shut down the radio station because I was selling ads on both. So it was cool because they got to have their ad on both the podcast as it was growing and then the radio station.
That's cool. I- Um, are you still featuring music with permission on the podcast, or have you gotten away from that by chance?
So we're only featuring indie artists. So anyone that submits to us through the different channels we have, like Submit Hub and Groover and Broadjam, and like directly on our website, we ask them to all like give us permission. And basically the trade is we're giving you promotion and you're letting us play your song. Trust me, we're not making any money off of it.
Right. I
In fact,
have.
it's costing us quite a bit to create the podcast, right? But
Yeah.
it's a passion.
Yeah. I have just gotten away from featuring any music. I was doing kind of like you're doing, permission based, and people had new stuff, indie artists.
Mhm.
But I think maybe what really made me decide to stop was Spotify, because I haven't had any problems that I know of. I have pulled music from some episodes, but I just haven't made the time to go through all of them. I don't have like a gazillion that have music, but quite a few. I thought, what are the chances Spotify just like sees those, and maybe they know they exist, but it's not in their catalog, or they're like, no,
I'd say the chances are high. So we
yeah,
are actually not on Spotify right now.
mm.
We got pulled in 2019, I think it even was,
For
maybe
featuring
20.
music.
So the Women of Substance podcast does not exist on Spotify anymore.
Okay,
So we are on Apple, we were on Google and all that as they had podcasts.
basically everywhere but Spotify.
Yes, everywhere but Spotify. We're hoping to be able to get back on there. If we were working with a company to help us prove that we have permission and be able to get back on Spotify. But yeah, they find it to be too much of a competitor with their playlists.
Sure. Yeah, as that is exactly what I've been worried about. So I'm just like, I'm gonna just not do it anymore. But I do, for whatever reason, they haven't flagged me that I know of. But I assume they notify you, even if it's just on an episode basis.
I think they do. But if you got flagged a few times, they would just shut you down. So, yeah, I don't play any music on the female entrepreneur musician or profitable musician at all. We're just talking about music and musicians, but not using any music.
Okay, good to know. That was a lot of background, a lot of that for me. But the music thing
Yes.
is interesting. I still run it. Well, it's been a little while, but I have somewhat recently run into podcasters who are playing music willy-nilly and don't seem to understand what the ramifications can be. So
I mean, we have an opening song and a closing song, but that's by permission. We specifically say on there by permission by this artist, and we give their website and stuff.
yeah, that's cool. Now, for you, I guess as you mentioned, starting a podcast was kind of watching the direction of things. Well, I have been curious. Well, maybe you're not that special of a case, but um, you're providing a lot of services to musicians, maybe still doing mentoring. You've done some courses, the Profitable Musician Summit in the past, and those kind of things. What was your deciding factor to go into podcasting outside of, it was just kind of the direction things were going from streaming. Was there either a musician, like Breathe the Musician focus, or was there a business focus, or was it some kind of hybrid?
Well, as I said before, for the women of substance, it was I want more exposure for these artists, and I think that podcasting is the way to go. That's going to be the growing field. So that's why I did that. And also offering them advertising opportunities. So artists sponsor our podcasts, and some other music companies and stuff sponsor them so they can get exposure. And they could do that on the radio station, but I just wanted them to get as much exposure as possible. So podcasting was the way to go. As far as why I started the female entrepreneur musician in 2015, it was to connect with my perfect customers. I was about to start the Female Musician Academy, and I wanted to basically to speak directly to those people. And if I called it female entrepreneur musician, and if anyone thought of themselves at all as, embodying that, they're going to listen to the show. And those are the people that I wanted. Now, weirdly, like it was a little aspirational because I think back then people didn't think of themselves as entrepreneurs. Today, it's like not a big deal. Everyone thinks they are entrepreneurs, I think, or creatives or something like that.
Hmm.
Back then, it was like musicians and business, it was separate. So I was kind of trying to like be aspirational with that title, but like basically draw in the people that were going to get my vibe of like, I know I need to learn the business stuff, but I don't know it yet. And I think you can help me.
Remembering back to when you first launched the podcast, what was the like the single big? I laugh because it always makes me think of funny stories. But what was like the biggest technical or logistical hurdle that you had to deal with? And did you really have any coming from streaming to podcasting? Was it seemed like it would be somewhat different, I guess. Yeah, I guess there were some considerable differences, but what was the big hurdle for you, if any?
Well, it was very different because I was actually talking, at the streaming, I was just putting together playlists and I could do that whenever, wherever. Back then, I had much younger kids. My kids are now 22 and 16.
Well,
So, 10 years ago, they're very different ages. And my desk was in the kitchen. So it was very hard to be able to podcast and do my work like during the day or when people were around. So it I had like a mic all set up down. We had this downstairs office that was off the garage, and I kind of shared it with my husband. But let me tell you, it got very cold in the winter. So
yeah.
I'd have to go down there, and when it's like 40 degrees, and we didn't yet have a mini split heating system down there, and try to podcast when the kids were at school because I just didn't have it set up upstairs. I only had one like really nice mic, so it was all set up down there. Or I'd do it at night or early in the morning. Sometimes I'd go down there and do it. So it was just it was hard to find the right times to do the podcasting and get a rhythm for sure. Because when I released the Women of Substance at first, it was 3 days a week, maybe 5 days a week. I think we were 5 days a week for a while.
Wow.
Like I was like John Lee Dumas was my hero. He used to podcast every day, 5 days a week. I'm like, I can do that. So, and I had the content. I had all this great music. So I'm like, I'm gonna do it 5 days a week. And I did for probably maybe a year and a half to 2 years. I did it 5 days a week, and it was a lot. Then I moved it to 3 days a week. It was much easier to do. And then,
I
of course, the
gotcha.
other podcast was like once a week.
Wow. So, I mean, it was really just the life circumstances, the getting in a situation where you had a controlled studio environment were the biggest things for you. And those are, I mean, I guess I've heard that many times.
Yeah, and it was, it's timing. Like I did have seasons where one at a time, my kids were homeschooling. So sometimes, I couldn't do it when they were in the school day. and I couldn't do it in the evening when everybody was watching Disney Channel or whatever. So I had to do it in the mornings or the evenings for a while. So that was definitely a big challenge.
Man, yeah. I'm sure that stuff is not terribly uncommon.
Yeah,
Um,
no, anyone that's a mom or has any kind of family responsibilities knows what I'm talking about.
totally. So, what's the one thing you'd wish you'd known that, yeah, before you started recording the actual podcasts? And again, I think of you as so different. You've been doing the streaming thing, but like you said, you go from streaming playlists to talking. But yeah, what's the thing you wish you'd known?
I think I would have probably like front loaded more episodes.
Hmm.
I didn't know when I started the Profitable Musician in 2020, I knew so much more. And I front loaded that with like 5 episodes. So when I launched it, people could binge. People could really get into it, get them excited enough to want to subscribe.
Hmm.
And when I started those other ones, I didn't do that. And so I think I would have done that. It would have taken the pressure off too because I was new to interviewing.
Hmm.
Like I was pretty comfortable talking. I had always had a lot of practice talking on stage and things like that. But interviewing was a little different.
Yeah.
And I wasn't as comfortable with asking questions off the cuff like I am now. Now I don't even ever have a script or anything. But back then, I had a script and then, I was just like so worried about what I was going to say and how I was going to say it. And so I think I would have taken the pressure off if I had put a few more in the can before I started.
So I did do that when I first started because it was recommended. But did you find, as I did, I don't know if you were doing just strictly interviews, but I was decided I'm just going to do interviews. As I mentioned before we started talking about deeply about podcasting, now I do intersperse some solo episodes. But in the early days, did you have these weeks where you're stressed that who's going to be on my podcast next episode?
Yeah, I did. If I didn't have enough done ahead and then like somebody ghosted me or they had a family emergency, which happens more than you might think, and they can't show up, um, that can put the stress on. And I did do only interviews for a while,
Hmm.
but I did decide to start doing some solo episodes when I was going to launch something because I wanted them to hear from me. So that was easier because then I could do those on my own time. I didn't have to, because that was the other thing about interviews, right? I have to do it when the other people are available, and I'm on Pacific time, so that could be a little bit problematic if I need to do it in the evening for people that are on Eastern and that kind of thing. So that was the other thing of like being a mom while trying to do it was trying to organize my times with the interview people. So
Hmm.
once I did my solo episodes, it was much easier to get them done, but it was a little more nerve-wracking too because I had to come up with all the content.
I found I have only, 300 some episodes in, and I guess published the first one in 2017. So, whatever, 8 years now. I only recently have gotten comfortable doing solo episodes. And I think for me, it was just like wasn't sure I knew enough to be talking, on my
Mhm.
own. But I think by virtue of the content that I've accumulated, it gives me a lot of topic matter to mine, and that's become easier with AI tools, as you can imagine. But
Yep.
then also, I think I embrace this idea that like I'm learning with you. Like I have not done a lot of this stuff. I try to say often. So, or I'm testing these things,
Mm.
and this is what they're saying works. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to do it because then people aren't expecting you to be an expert, which is good. One thing that really got me out of it was in 2017 when live streaming came into the world, Facebook Live.
Mm-hmm.
I forced myself to do a show once a week, and I used it for the podcast a
Okay.
lot of the time. And it was a recorded live. It was called Indie Interactive. And I was, going on every week. I had slides. I did, it was a full-on thing where I was teaching a subject and I was interacting with people and stuff. And so, that also gave me tons of stuff for the podcast for me to put on the podcast without having to do interviews. Because at that point, I was really trying to like build up my connection with the audience. And so I did go through a period where I don't think I really interviewed very much for a while. And then I think I took a break. I did take a break in there. I took a break, I think in like 20, I think when I was doing the summits, it was just so much to do the summits.
Yeah.
And so I took a break from the podcast for a while until I until the pandemic. And then I was like, oh my gosh, these people need guidance. And so I brought the podcast back, and it was all about how you can make money, during this economy and, all that stuff. Before I even started Profitable Musician, I brought the other podcasts back and just wanted to serve.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And do you still do anything like that where you do those video classes or whatever you called it, workshops?
I do them inside my membership, the
Okay,
Female Musician Accelerator. We have like Q&A coaching calls. We have once a month workshops where I teach a particular subject,
cool.
and I love doing those. But
Sure.
I don't do live streaming anymore
Yeah.
because I feel like I've really built up my audience enough that I don't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, after the pandemic, like people were kind of sick of being online all the time. It was very much a cool thing, in 2017 when it was new.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess now they're with you online for a very specific purpose, like they signed up for some program or whatever. So,
Right.
yeah, that's cool. I like it. So you mentioned when we first started talking about doing this episode that we should discuss how podcasting has benefited musicians, which was kind of the theme uh, for my outreach. And can you share like the most concrete opportunities or career things that came directly from your podcast?
There's some direct and indirect, right? So there's definitely, I got asked to be part of an article that got put on Forbes, which was cool, about women in podcasting and is like fighting the patriarchy or something like that. And that's cool, to be able to say that I have had an article on Forbes that I helped write, which is awesome. I've, won a couple interesting awards. I won the Podcasters Paradise Most Creative Podcast Award or something like that. So they're little things that you can hang your hat on, you can put on your bio and stuff. I think that it really does increase your authority. Like you find out that people know about you that you didn't know of. You don't know of them, right? But then like I think I was in a group with somebody recently and I was like, "Oh, I do this." And then he was like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of you, and my students have told me about you or I saw you here or there, when you start getting on these, as I think I saw that we were both on this list of like top 50 podcasts for, musicians or,
Hmm.
to like marketing podcasts or something like that. When you get on those lists, that gives you some cred. And then I think also for me, it just allowed me to like, it forced me to kind of become a thought leader, think through things on how I want to teach things, how I want to approach things or talk about things from my own perspective. And then eventually, you know, having to create content and everything, it helped me to develop my own musician's profit path method, which eventually became a book. And then that just even boosts your credibility. You get to become a speaker and, all that kind of stuff. Right. I think one thing is if you're a podcaster, people know that you can probably be a speaker. And
Yep.
so that's also opening doors there.
You just reminded me that so I had a guest who had authored a book about he was with Forbes. He was on staff with I guess Forbes.com. He had authored a book about well, he'd authored some about different musicians, and it was largely about the ones who were really making it, like the famous people. And then most recently, he had published one, or maybe he's substacking this one, but and now I'm getting foggy. But it's called "We're All Musicians Now," and
Mm.
just sort of talking about the way the economy's gone, and the independent sort of
Hmm.
artist or thinker. But I think after our first interview, he messaged me and said, "Hey, I'm looking for contributors for Forbes.com. Would you like to write some articles for us?" And I forgot
Mm.
all about that, so that was kind of a neat opportunity. Yeah, I wrote several articles for them.
Yeah, I think one major thing that it's allowed me to do is meet other people in the industry,
Yeah, that's
right?
great.
I've had so many people on my podcast now, hundreds of episodes, and, probably done 200 interviews, if I look back and count the
Mm-hmm.
people that I've interviewed. And a lot of them, some of them are musicians, but a lot of them are people that work in the industry, like myself. And so I've met partners and I've been able to like introduce my audience to what they do and, vice versa. And, just met people that I've worked together. Like, for example, I'll give you a really good example. So, someone who messaged me out of the blue in the very first 6 months of me having a podcast. And she, basically pitched me and she's like, this is what I do. And, I have been gigging for 25 years. I do it all myself. I do all my own booking, etc. So I had her on the show. She was awesome. Like I loved the practical tips. She and I really got along. We kept in touch over the few years. Then I ended up helping her to develop her own course on booking. Then I brought her into the academy as one of the coaches. And then, she eventually left that and was doing other things. And then we reconnected recently. We're like, hey, let's do some podcast episodes of us just talking about stuff that relates to musicians, kind of like we are now, but like super casual, like we were at a coffee shop and like do a series. So now we do it once a month where it's, Bree and Tara talking about some musical subject. And it's just easy and fun. And all because she messaged me to be someone to be interviewed on my podcast.
That's really cool. That's really cool. An ongoing relationship and friendship.
Yep.
I think I probably hear most people that I talk to about podcasts, and these are not just people in music, but they just immediately talk about the people that they've met. Has
Mm.
just been fantastic. So
Yeah, people all over the world. Like I never would meet these people otherwise.
we can both think of how many musicians have don't podcast, never will, maybe haven't thought of it, maybe thought of it but aren't doing it. But like, how can you best talk about how it changed your relationship with your audience compared to like other music marketing approaches? You're a great person to ask that because you've done all the things that you have done in marketing yourself as a musician, as a mentor, doing the events and all that. So yeah, how do you see podcasting has changed your relationship that might be of interest to other musicians and actually just creative people in general, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, it really deepens that relationship because they are basically putting you in their ear for hours, for like on a regular basis, right? I definitely feel like the people that I listen to their podcast every week, I almost have a relationship with them. I know that I don't, but I feel like I know them. I feel it's just more of like an instant trust if you kind of hear them over time and you get a sense for if they're really real and they really know what they're talking about, like they're willing to stand up for things that are important to them. Like those are all things for me that are important in somebody that I want to work with and that I'm just gonna like be a champion for, right? So even if it's about promoting your music, like if I always say like if people don't like you, like the person, then even if they like your music, they probably aren't going to ever become a champion for it
Right.
because there's no reason to like really get behind it. It's like, yeah, that song's good. But like, no, if you know what this person's about and their goals and their experience and you feel attached to them, you're going to want to put that forward. You're going to want to promote that music if you like it. And so I think it's just really creates that bond. And it creates more connection points of like things that we have in common, like you were asking me about our cat, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're a cat lover, you'd be like, oh, she has a kitten, that's so cool, you know?
Yeah.
And it just in some ways we have to stand out, but we also have to show how we are similar to the people in our audience, so they're going to feel that affinity, like that, feel they're at home with you.
Yeah, that's great. So
And podcasting gives you a lot of time to do that.
I can relate so much to like the feeling of friendship or bond that you have even with a lot of these people that you've never had the opportunity to meet in person, but like, and maybe haven't talked to them in a really long time, but when I reconnect, it just feels, it sounds corny, but it feels pretty special.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you meet people in person that you've listened to on a podcast for years, you feel like you're just picking up the conversation, which is crazy.
Totally. It's really cool. What's the biggest misconception that you think musicians or other creative people would have about what it takes to maintain a successful podcast?
I would say like the consistency that it takes to keep it going. It is it is a bit of a grind sometimes. You really have to plan if you're going to go on vacation for 3 weeks like I did this summer and not want to have to podcast while you're gone, which I could have, but I didn't want to. You have to plan ahead. You have to be able to. I hear so many people that are like so excited about the idea of podcasting and um, they think that the idea is going to be enough to drive them to do the grunt work. And while you can be very excited about your idea, you have to have just a like deep-seated desire to make this thing long term. And so you gotta have a plan for that. How are you going to be consistent? Because I really don't think that you're going to build up your audience if you're not consistent.
True.
And so, I mean, I think you need to come up with a cadence that you can do. My friend Tara, like she brought her podcast back recently when I approached her and said, let's do these episodes. And, she's like, that's cool. It'll make things easy for me. I'm going to do a few solo episodes, but she's not pushing herself out of what she can do. She's gigging all the time. She's like, I can only put out a podcast once every 2 weeks, but I'm going to stick to that. And I'm not going to try to push myself beyond that, but I'm going to do that and I'm going to be there for my audience every 2 weeks. And that's perfect. But you can't, think that like I did in the beginning of Women of Substance. I'm like, I'm going to go 5 days a week, right? And I stuck with that because damned if I was going to like give up on that when I said that was what I was going to do. I was just like determined. And eventually I was like, this really isn't necessary. I kept the promise to myself and I did this for like a year and a half. It's not necessary to do it 5 days a week. But you gotta make a plan and you gotta stick to it. And so many people don't do that. So many people start something out, they get all excited, they launch. I was talking to somebody else who has a podcast and she's like, let's swap trailers. And I'm like, cool. And she's like, yeah, I need more trailers because all the people that I swap with have pod faded already. And I'm like, well, don't worry about me pod fading. I've been around for 10 years.
Yeah, every time I hear the numbers, it would, and I'm not good at remembering numbers like this, but the number of podcasts that are out there, but then it gets put in context, like the ones that are actually still podcasting, dramatic difference, the ones that get started and then the ones that just, go away versus one that keep going.
Yep.
Crazy. I can relate to pretty much everything you just said. I'm actually publishing every other week, and I've gotten really heavy into since last time we spoke into once every other week newsletter.
That's great.
Thank you, and have expanded that just last week or yeah, about a week ago to Substack, which
Oh yeah, me too. So I do two newsletters every week. On Wednesday is the Profitable Musician newsletter, and Friday is the Femme Friday newsletter, which is specifically for women,
Okay.
female musicians. And so I decided to take that Friday one and put it on Substack as its own like branded thing as Femme Music Friday. And so just, it's not a huge following over there yet because I'm not digging into it, but I'm just seeing if it's going to be a good discovery platform.
That's cool. Yeah, what's drawn me to it is I have heard more than once, both times or however many times, somewhat recently, that the community there is like actually good, the community
Hmm.
feature. So, and I knew that I suspected it had some content features built in that were attractive. It's funny, I'm actually finding, I use, it used to be called ConvertKit. It's called Kit now for
Me too.
hosting.
I also
Okay.
use Kit.
Well, you've probably noticed the same, but they seem to be trying to do their own version of Substack. And then just today, I was like, oh, look at that. They have a way for me to put a private podcast up with one of their apps.
Oh,
But
but you can put a private podcast?
yeah, I just saw this today.
Oh, I know it. It's a Hello Audio. Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Okay, yeah, maybe that was the one.
Yeah.
But
You do have to pay
anyway,
for it though. I have not done that, but I do love the idea of a private podcast.
yeah, I mean, to be able I was thinking just after publishing my first two posts on Substack, I was thinking, I actually have a very relevant podcast that I could just put a clip of that I haven't done anywhere else. So that would be kind of a neat little exclusive thing. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So that
Well, Substack now has podcasts. They now have video. They have everything now. They're trying to be like the all-in-one.
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So how do you approach networking different through podcasting as a medium? Differently than traditional industry networking, because you clearly have developed a lot of cool relationships within the industry and with other musicians. So how do you see it as different, or how do you treat it differently?
I think it's a really good gateway to networking with someone. I can get a really good sense of whether I'm going to get along with them. I like their vibe and all that by interviewing them first. Before we talk about, oh, let's do a partner launch or let's, do something together. It just lets me know if they're going to be someone that I want to work with. It's just so much easier to figure that out on a podcast. And then I get content out of it instead of just going on a Zoom meeting and just talking. Doing a podcast lets me ask them any of the questions that I want to ask them, within reason, obviously, because it's public, but so I can get to know them and their stance on things and the way that they do things and see if that's somebody I'd want to either, you know, uh, work with in the future in some way.
That's a really good point. I don't know if you recall, but I started out audio only, and only because of the dang pandemic and everyone's, I suddenly had to get off of Skype and be on Zoom and be on video for everyone. But I've not really done a lot with video. But boy, talk about an intimate medium to even with the video, but what an intimate medium to be able to talk to people like we are right now. And I still believe that doing audio only is even more so. And I don't know what it is, but it is. When I have a guest who is taking the opportunity seriously, because obviously with audio only they can fidget around more if they want, but that doesn't usually happen. But it has happened.
Yeah, I have, yeah. I do video,
Hmm.
but I've had people that have treated video as if it was audio only, and it was not good. Like they weren't thinking about what they were doing. I'm like, I can't air this. This is you're like literally looking at your phone while we're having this conversation. That doesn't work.
That's has been a challenge. I was looking forward to speaking with you, the fact that you and I were speaking for this episode, because you are a podcaster and you know about doing good audio. You know about what the ramifications of not doing decent video are. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately in terms of trying to keep a consistently better production value. And I'm kind of trying to think of it from an evergreen standpoint, because they're in a large sense, podcasts have become so much more competitive, and there are a lot of really high end productions out there, many of which will be around for a while. So I think it may matter. And anyway, I've just been thinking about it like, okay, yeah, how do I do that? Limit myself more who I talk to, or do I need to look toward a day where I'm sending people gear? Do I move to in person only? But all those things present
Mm.
challenges.
I mean, I totally agree with that, but on the other side of that coin, I have also kind of gone to the if I don't make it easy on myself, it's not going to get done and I'm going to hate it.
Yeah.
So, that's why this is why I don't have a YouTube channel. I have tried. I
Hmm.
just can't deal with the editing and the polish and the things that are required to have a good YouTube channel. And so what I came to in myself is I'd rather keep podcasting and unless like something catastrophic happens, I'm not going to edit because I want to have video and I don't want to have to edit video. That's just way too labor intensive for me, with everything else that I'm doing. So I've just kind of made that decision. And yes, my videos that are on YouTube that are my long podcast videos, they don't get a ton of views, right? Because they're not exciting and they don't have jump cuts. And that's okay. I've just decided that that's okay because I'd rather be able to put the content out there and connect with the people that really can use the content than worry about being perfect.
Sure. Well, I wish I was more like you. The editing thing has probably been my one curse, and I've gone from,
Mm.
having someone doing it, and now I'm doing it myself again these days. And that's why I don't do video because, yes, that's another editing chore and a pretty big one at that. But you probably know this, but it's worth saying for people that are listening. But with YouTube, most podcasters who have a YouTube channel or who are doing video of any kind are not going to get most of their listenership there. But with YouTube specifically, it really is a good component for the discovery part of your podcast. Because the fact of the matter is that if you're doing anything that's long form, 20 minutes or more, um, unless they have a YouTube premium account, they're not going to watch that. Probably not going to watch a lot of your episodes in their
There's too
entirety on
many
video.
commercials. Oh my gosh. I try to watch things on YouTube and it drives me nuts. There's so many ads.
Yeah.
I would say though, like I said, I don't get very many views on my long podcast, like literally like 50 or less most of the time. But
And that's not
I
bad.
get, I guess, and there are people that exclusively follow my podcast on YouTube. That's it. They're not following it anywhere else. I don't even know if they're watching. Maybe they're listening only. That's cool. That's how they consume. But my shorts do way better. So
Hmm.
the reason I do video mostly is so I can do shorts, so I can do Instagram Reels, TikTok, like all the stuff that I can grab from the episode that you can't if you don't have video.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing I have talked about and will stress in the whole podcast startup course I mentioned to you is that video content. I mean, there are a lot of different ways to approach video, and one of them is just including what you said. Like, I'm not going to do a full episode, but I'm gonna use this video for some short content, and that can be very impactful, as you just testified.
Yep. Yep, for sure.
That's great. Okay, so what practical advice would you give a musician or other creative if they could only focus on one thing in the first 90 days to set themselves up for long-term success with a podcast?
Oh man.
That's a tough question, isn't
That's
it?
yeah, that's like a huge question. I would say, I mean, things are so much easier now, honestly, with AI, right? Just even coming up with a good solid set of interview questions would be so fast, right? I remember listening to other podcasts and taking down questions that I liked and,
Yeah.
coming up with this set of questions that again I never look at anymore, but I did for the first year for sure. Because it was nerve-wracking if I didn't have questions in front of me. So I would definitely come up with a good solid set of questions. Try to come up with something interesting, like, unique, not the same questions. Obviously, you want to try to tailor the questions to the person that you're talking to. Now I read their bio, I ask them for talking points and I tailor my questions to that. for sure. But when I first started, I did have a standard set of questions. And so make sure you have that because that'll make it a lot easier. You can totally go off the cuff, you can go on tangents, but having that one solid piece, if you're doing interviews, you need to have that. Also, this is a very simple thing, but let me tell you, if you don't do it, it's kind of a disaster or frustrating, is have a scheduler. Because if you're trying to figure out, you know, when they can meet and when you can meet and all that, and you're going back and forth, it's awful. Schedulers are free. I use Acuity and it is still free, the version that I use. And you can have them fill out forms, you can do all that stuff. It makes your life so much easier. So I feel like that's the first thing someone should set up if they're doing interviews is a scheduler, because otherwise you're going to tear your hair out for sure. Um, Now, if they're not doing interviews, they're doing a solo thing, I would just brainstorm using AI topics and get yourself some quick outlines at least. If you're really good at talking off the cuff, that's cool, but you still want outlines because you don't want to just go far afield or you don't want to, run out of things to say or not have thought through that. And even if you're recording, when I first started, I was recording audio only. I was starting and stopping myself and just piecing it all together. And you can do that from the beginning. Now I just kind of have an outline and go for it, right? But that's a skill that you develop. So just having a structure, whether it's interviews or whether it's your solo episodes, is definitely going to make everything easier for you.
Super good advice. I was thinking I knew I'd probably mention this and or because we would talk about AI and it has made I mean, God, if you knew how much time I spent like trying to come up with a title and like write an
Right?
episode description and piece of cake now, but it has made so many facets of it easier, even without spending any money for like sophisticated tools. But it also enables you to reach farther and do more, just be more, air quotes, productive toward meeting whatever goals you have for your podcast. So, in one sense, it has really made a lot of tasks easier, but it's empowering us to do more and just keep ourselves maybe all the much more busier or as busy as we were, unless we were just trying to get this one thing done and the aspirational runway is it's already set. And then, man, yeah, AI has just made your life a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean I used to actually have like a VA service that did all the back end stuff for me, and I don't need that anymore. Right? I can just stick it into Cast Magic and it will give me the transcript and it will give me a summary and give me a YouTube description and title, and it gives you a lot of titles to choose from, so you can, and I usually like kind of amalgam a few that they have.
Hmm.
Their ones are never like my perfect title, but it's so much easier. I can do that now post production right after I finish my interview. I immediately stick it into Cast Magic, pull all that stuff out. I've got everything I need now to put it in my newsletter, to put it on YouTube. Like I can just get all that done. And so it's done in advance, which to me is the best thing about having AI. When the podcast comes out, like I'm literally like, oh, it's, Rabanzo's episode this week. I didn't realize because I'd already done everything on the back end for it. And when it comes out, I'm like, oh, let me let him know. Here's his assets. But everything else is already done.
That's great. Yeah. Handy tools. It's um, changing our lives.
Yes.
Okay, so my last one on this list, although you had me open this file, this text document I have on a long list of just questions. So you may get another one. These ones that really catch my eye and get me thinking. But anyway, the last one I had planned was, given how the podcasting landscape has evolved since you started, and you have been doing it for a while, even I guess I could say the same for myself. What advice would you give to creatives and musicians starting podcasts this year in 2025 that might be different from what worked 5 or maybe 10 years ago?
I think doing podcast swaps, feed swaps, um, collab episodes, I think that might be something that's really working right now. Because I know that I'm not out there looking for new podcasts. As someone who loves podcasts, who listens to them every day, I've got enough in my queue, but sometimes I get sick of the ones that I have, right? So what tends to happen to me is if I'm listening to another podcast, I hear a really good guest, or I hear someone who's doing a collab episode, or I hear someone who's doing a feed swap, which means that they put one of their episodes, it's like a takeover, they put one of their episodes on that person's feed that's introduced by that person. So it's not just like randomly thrown there. It's like, hey, this is my friend, this person, and she's going to talk about this because I know this is helpful to you. I've found some of my new favorite podcasts that way. So I think it might not be as much about like going into Spotify or into Apple and like searching for podcasts about a certain subject, although people do that. A lot of times you find pod faded podcasts, which is really frustrating because the podcast looks super exciting and then you're like, oh, their last episode was in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
So I have been just finding a lot of new episodes that way organically. So I think that's one reason I think that my friend and I are doing collabs on each other's feeds because then we do, this one thing that is like basically half the work because we're doing it together. And then we both have an episode, and then we're introducing each other to each other's audiences. Our audiences are very well aligned, very same type of people. And so we know we're doing a service for the audience too.
That's cool. That's very cool. I wonder if that is a somewhat stronger practice among female podcasters as opposed to the guys.
It's
Um,
possible.
yeah,
I feel like women are very collaborative.
they
Sometimes
are. I
men
know
are very
this.
siloed.
Mm-hmm.
Although
Yeah.
you're not that way, but I mean, and there are plenty of men. I know that I think I met you because I was introduced to you by I think D. Grant Smith, maybe.
Could have been. Yep.
Someone like you guys are not siloed. Like, he's always introducing me to people. But I think that you're right, that women just it feels good to collaborate. I love doing something that's doesn't have to be all me,
That'd probably be a
you
great
know?
way for me to get more female guests on the podcast is see if they want to collaborate.
There you go.
Being approached, I guess, by less female artists, and yeah, you always want to. I don't know if you feel this way, but I always want to have um, a diverse number of voices on the podcast, be it more women, more people of color, and I feel like sometimes I feel like I need to go out of my way more that they just don't seek me out. And that may be because, they see a bunch of whatever white dudes on here and the occasional female, I don't know. Or it could be the nature of the artists that I have on and, I need to maybe be more genre. And it's by no specific effort of mine. I mean, if it was up to me, I'd be talking to a lot more kind of more like rock bands.
Mm.
But I just by nature, I don't know, by nature of the podcast, or maybe it's just the whole folk singer songwriter thing. Uh,
I think bands are less likely to seek out podcasting as a way to promote themselves anyway.
okay.
I can't think of the last time I was approached by a band. It's mostly solo artists
Mm-hmm.
or duos, like you said, folk singer-songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Pop for definitely I get pop people. Obviously for me, I don't have the problem of having diversity between men and women. Like I have plenty of women on my podcast. Um, and I think we've done pretty well with diversity,
That's good.
racial and cultural diversity, but some of it is, I'll be honest, like some of it is just who approaches me, right? Sometimes I'm busy and I don't have time to like seeking people out. Now, recently I did use AI to create myself a nice big list of people that I think that it thinks are very well aligned with the show. And I need to go through and see like, hey, have I had these people? A lot of them I have had on there, but a lot of them I didn't know who they were. So,
Yeah, that's a good idea. I did something somewhat similar. I had my AI buddy. I had a conversation about like if I were to start mining the outside external world for guests. Now that you know what you know about the podcast, what do you recommend? Where do you recommend I go? So I have is actually a very recent sort of project on my list to start looking at these avenues for the type of guests that I'm interested in. So hopefully that will be of help. But it will be work, you know. I mean, I guess I could have just said, "Hey, give me some recommendations of guests that meet these criteria." That's certainly another approach, and arguably easier.
Yeah, and of course we can always just reach out to other people in the end. I can anytime I want, I could reach out to my guests, any of
Hmm.
the guests that I really liked and say, "Hey, do you have anyone?" Especially if they're podcasters,
Yeah,
right? If they're podcasters, they know plenty of people that if I say like, "Hey, I really want someone to come on and talk about YouTube. Can you recommend somebody?"
that's a
And
good
that's how I found
approach.
people that I wanted to talk on a specific subject.
That's a good approach. Very good approach. Well, Bree, I think we did it. It should be a great start to a little mini series I'm doing. Did you? I know I did kind of most of the asking. Is
I
there
just wanted to know why you started your podcast. I didn't get to ask.
because Chris Ducker told me I needed one.
Because Chris Ducker told you. Were you a new youpreneur? Like, how were
Uh-huh.
you?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
got it.
I'd written the book.
So it was because of the book, and he thought that would be a good way to get yourself out there as
Yeah,
you
he
know
was
a,
like, "You need a podcast,
a
Roberto." I
voice.
can hear his voice. But
Yes,
yeah, but you know, it was a really wonderful discovery, and I'm glad he encouraged me because it really opened my eyes to all these different things in music that I didn't know about. And you know, for I don't find it all great, all the changes that have happened in the industry, but it certainly leaves no shortage of things to learn about.
that's true.
And you know, the other things we've talked about, like relationships and things like that. And you know, like with the book, I was trying to help people, and the podcast and the newsletter are all about helping musicians that are you know at a specific point in their journey and just trying to make things better. And I think there's just so many people, so many musicians out there right now with that too, because things are ever changing, and it's not easy to find the fulfillment that you want and you know make some money and all that good stuff. So
Yep. Have you monetized your podcast in any way?
yeah, but you know, I wouldn't say it's a legitimate source of income. It's very kind of sporadic. And so I'm trying to be, you know, I've had some sponsors, donations, sales of paid newsletter, which is kind of an extension of the podcast. And then this course, the first that I've done. So yeah, I'm going to focus on this and the things that I have established and work on the monetization part just to, yeah, keep the lights on, so to speak.
For sure. I'm
Yeah.
curious, has podcasting ever felt like a burden to you?
Sure.
Let's be honest. Yes, I
Yeah,
agree.
I mean, you know, you were talking about the, you know, the self-imposed pressure, but today, well, two things about today. Like I've never, no, I shouldn't say never, but I've never on purpose said, you know what, I'm just going to publish this episode tomorrow. It's drop day, but I literally start getting worried at 2 minutes past the scheduled time, and I'm like, huh, you know, it's so funny. I didn't even think about the normal thing I would always think about. I need a backup plan for this because maybe something happened and she can't make it today.
Right. No, seriously, I've definitely had some people that are like, I am so sorry, but like, I have a family emergency. My daughter's in the hospital, or, whatever it is.
Hmm. Do you ever ask yourself, like, how long am I going to have to do this before I learn that lesson?
No, because I'm very far ahead thing. I try to be at least a month, if not, there was a period there that I was at least 3 months ahead. And then I feel kind of bad because I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, like when people approach me, I'm like, yeah, like you sound like a really good guest, but just so you know, your episode won't come out until December. Do you still
Hmm.
want to come on the show?
Yeah, I've been there. I don't do so many interviews nowadays that I have that lovely problem. But I do plan ahead, but it's just so funny that I did what I did today because if something would have happened and you wouldn't have been on, I'd have been like, well, let's see if I can still get one out tomorrow. But I do have something that was already planned, but it's not built out yet. I would have, you know, I
Right.
got to record it, I need to
Oh,
outline it,
I
all that good
probably
stuff.
scared you when I was 5 minutes late because
Oh,
I lost
totally.
track of time.
No, no, I honestly have gotten to a point where like nobody is going to freak out if this doesn't come out until Saturday or Monday
Right.
or even Tuesday. So that's
Yeah,
been,
but I will be on. I mean, I am someone that listens to podcasts and I know the days of the week they come out.
yeah,
And I might not notice it right away, but like if it's like Tuesday or if it's like Thursday and I know that a certain podcast comes out on Tuesday, I might not notice it right away on Tuesday, but by Thursday I'll be like, "Hey, where is that episode? Like it's not there. What happened to it?"
yeah. Well, I'm sure it's a product of listenership in terms of number of downloads, but no one's ever called me out on it. Like, hey,
Uh-huh.
well, I noticed you didn't drop one Friday.
I
But
agree. I've never had that happen either. It's just more my internal like
totally,
type A personality.
totally. Well, as per usual, thank you. Well, I was going to say, as per usual, I'll send you all the goodies about this episode. And if there's anything you need from me, please don't hesitate. I'm glad that we
Yeah.
reconnected.
I'm glad I offered to talk instead of write all that stuff out. It's much more fun for me.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I think it's going to be a super valuable conversation, and it was a real joy to speak with you
Cool.
again.
So can you send me the recording and then I can put it on? I definitely want to put it on my feed. I think that'll be cool.
I sure will.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Bree.
Okay. Happy editing.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.
As an independent podcaster, your support means the world to me. You could even say I depend on it. With that in mind, here are some things you can do to help support us. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Or shoot me a review by email, rabonzo@unstarvingmusician.com, that I can use on the website. Or just share this episode with a friend. This makes a huge impact on our audience growth. You could also visit our crowd sponsor page at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn of the many other ways of supporting the podcast, including a quick and easy online tip jar. It's like click, tip, done, easy and super appreciated. You'll find many ways of showing your support there, including through our affiliate partners like Bandzoogle, Kit, Email, formerly ConvertKit, DreamHost, and others. The music you're hearing is New Gods Part 2, the instrumental mix by yours truly. You can hear the full version, download it, or buy it at rabonzo.com. And if all this was too much to remember or process, just go to the show notes for this episode at unstarvingmusician.com to find links to all the stuff talked about in this episode. You can leave us feedback, questions, comments, complaints at unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. Thanks for listening. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.